button. You'll see that little red button up there now. So
I
we
do.
are recording Stephen Quay. Is how you pronounce your name?
Absolutely, Mark.
Got it. And you're from Michigan. You were so we're recording, but this is just my craziness. I heard you say out and about, so you must have been near Canada.
Well,
No?
I grew up in the southern part of Michigan, and then the family was in Gaylord, which is about an hour south of the bridge.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Four generations of barbers on Main Street in Gaylord, Michigan.
Oh
And
wow.
then me.
And cool. All right, here we go. This is a special edition of Late Night. You know what? I'm sorry. I did one thing stupid. Every day it's a different setup. I apologize.
No problem.
My microphone would be nice to have. Yeah, right? Good. By the way, if you do these a lot, you should have an external mic. It'll cost you less than $100.
Okay.
Okay.
Good advice.
All right, here we go. Again.
Mhm.
This is a special edition of Late Night Health. I'm Mark Allen. Have you ever thought, where did COVID come from? I mean, for a year now, or just about a year, we have been sequestered, quarantined, staying away from family and friends. Have you ever thought of where COVID-19 has come from? Well, our guest is Dr. Stephen Quay. He is the CEO of atossa-therapeutics. I hope I'm getting that close. We'll fix that later. And he's written a paper. It's only been out about a week about the origins of COVID-19. Dr. Quay, welcome to Late Night Health.
It's great to be here, Mark, and I appreciate the chance to talk to you and your audience.
You know, I have heard so many theories. This is from somebody in China eating some kind of crazy thing like a frog. I've heard that some tech giants have created this to take over the world. There's nanotechnology in this. I mean, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I don't. I'm trying to wrap my head around COVID-19. I have talked to a number of people about COVID-19 and a couple of doctors who have indicated that they believe it's from a laboratory. You've written a paper on it, and you have you believe without a reasonable doubt that COVID came from a laboratory.
I do, Mark. It's paper's only been out a week. It's 193 pages. But it's interesting. It's been downloaded over 50,000 times in the 1 week period of time.
Wow.
So it uses a standard tool, a research standard tool that actually we all use when we predict baseball, but it's called Bayesian analysis. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. But basically you start with an assumption. I started that it was over 98% probably came from nature. And less than 2% that it came from a laboratory. And then I dropped 26 pieces of evidence in that existed. You turn the crank, there's a little bit of math. It's about 8th or 9th grade math because my 13-year-old daughter can handle it. And then the probabilities shift. And so you're absolutely right. By the time 26 pieces of evidence were put in there, it's only a 0.2% chance it came from nature, 99.8. So in the law, we talk about beyond a reasonable doubt as being, they don't quantify it in court, of course, when you're finding someone guilty, but 95 to 98% is the level that law schools will talk about. So this is beyond a reasonable doubt that it came from a laboratory.
And I should mention that not only is Dr. Quay an MD, medical doctor, and he's practiced and studied at very prestigious places throughout the United States. He's also a PhD. So he's doctor, and so he does know his stuff. Why would somebody develop what has become a pandemic? I've heard some stories, and I'll share my thoughts after you share yours.
Sure. So this virus shows the evidence of a kind of research that's called gain of function. So the concept is that as a virologist, as a public health person, you're interested in stopping the next epidemic or pandemic. One of the ways to do that is to bring the nearest neighbor viruses that you can find, sort of the worst ones out there already. You bring them in the laboratory, and then you give them extra functions. You produce things that make them more airborne, or more infectious, or more deadly. You try your best to do that under the most controlled conditions you can, because obviously you don't want to get infected and you don't want it to escape. But we know that in the last 30 years, for example, there's been one laboratory infected case out of these kinds of laboratories every year in Asia. So the purpose is noble, but if it gets out, you can end up with some pretty serious consequences. My goal in all of this is, I believe the public needs to have a serious debate where the pros and cons of this kind of research are discussed openly, and we can decide if our blood and treasure should be spent on this kind of research.
There's a recurring theme in science fiction, which I read a lot of after I read all these health books behind me, and we'll have to talk about your book, Stay Safe, which is available on Amazon. The reoccurring theme is, do we just have science for science sake? You go back to Frankenstein, do we try to reanimate a dead body just to see if we could do it? And maybe we could do that and save heart patients and people who have brain tumors, et cetera, et cetera. Or do we just let nature take its course? It's a hard decision, isn't it?
Well, it absolutely is, and so for a carpenter, every problem's if you have a hammer, every problem's a nail. So this kind of research is it's exciting research. Okay, look at you're doing things that would take evolution hundreds of years. You can do them in an afternoon. So it's pretty powerful. It's a pretty powerful feeling to be involved with that kind of research. And then what you want to do is you make your virus, so then you make your vaccine or you make your therapeutic against it. So they look at it as a holistic picture of that process. But I'm repeating myself, but these viruses are very, very dangerous and easy to get out. I mean, the last person that got SARS-CoV-1 was somebody working in a laboratory. It was not working with COVID-1. The COVID-1 was down the hall 3 doors. They got infected, they went home, and their mother died. So when SARS-CoV-1 stopped, the WHO said in July of 2003 that the epidemic was over. The next 4 cases that occurred were all laboratory people experimenting with it over the next year. And it kept coming out of the laboratory, infecting people, killing people. Finally, we haven't seen one recently of SARS-CoV-1, but we see one a year in Asia.
And the purpose is really to save lives, but it escaped. I mean, it's almost like it has a mind of its own. Okay, science fiction, but it got out, it infected people, and it's just spread like wildfire, which is scary.
Mm-hmm. I believe, this gets a little bit because you don't have a lot of experiments. So my approach was to take, okay, we have 3 infections that we know came from nature: SARS-1, MERS, which came from camels in 2015, and SADS, which is a coronavirus diarrhea in pigs. The Chinese ended up slaughtering about 10,000 pigs here about 3 or 4 years ago. So those 3 natural events are the ones that I use to model what happened here. And one of the remarkable things that happened over and over again is a laboratory-created virus is hugely more efficient than something from nature. And that's probably makes sense when you think about evolution. Evolution is kind of you try things, you make a lot of mistakes, things happen incrementally. This virus, in terms of its interaction with the human cell, had 99.5% of the best amino acids it could have when it first hit humans. Compare that SARS-CoV-1, 17%. So it took COVID-1 a whole year to go from 17% to 100%, practicing in humans, getting better and better. This thing hit the ground running with 99.5% perfection.
And so I don't want to get into a lot of politics
No, me neither.
right, but you don't think this will? Do you believe personally that this was released intentionally, which doesn't make sense to me, but I've got to ask the question.
I absolutely don't. I believe this was an accident. Full stop. I mean, there are some clues that point one way or the other, and I see no evidence that it was an intentional release.
At atossa-therapeutics, which is
Yes.
a publicly traded company, and you're the CEO, you've got a number of therapeutics that you have researched and developed with yourself and your team. Have you thought about coming up with another vaccine for this, or is it too late in the game?
Well, yeah. So I've invented 7 drugs that are FDA approved. They've helped 80 million people. The gadolinium that's used in MRI was one of my inventions, and I have nasal sprays for anemia and for osteoporosis. So we have 2 programs in COVID. One is a nasal spray that is like a chemical vaccine. It works for about 6 to 8 hours, we think. We've finished phase 1 trials, so I don't have efficacy data in patients. But the idea would be to be able to use it as a belt and suspenders for someone who's been vaccinated, but maybe you don't know how good your vaccination is, right? So if you're really a service-facing person interacting with a lot of people, you might use it. Or it might be a bridge to vaccine 2.0 as the virus begins to change. So the nasal spray is in that particular setting. And then we have a product to keep people off the ventilator in the hospital, which I'm really excited about, because if you can keep them off the ventilator or get them off quickly, that's where you're at the edge of losing the patient. When they go on a ventilator, I mean, I want to tell you, at the beginning of this, I think in the hospitals we were working with in New York, it was a 70% mortality the minute someone went on the ventilator. 7 out of 10 never came off, and we've got much better than that. But I still believe it's in the 20s to 30% fatal. Wow. So those are our 2 programs in COVID. So I absolutely believe there'll be a role for therapeutics, which we are. We're not doing another vaccine as far as I can see at this point in time. Historically, we vaccinate for influenza every year. There's still $1 billion worth of drugs and therapeutics when it doesn't work, they end up influenza in the hospital. So there'll always be a role for treating these diseases as well as vaccinating against them.
Personally, and as a doc, do you recommend taking a vaccine? A vaccine?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think if you look back 200 years and you go really 30,000 feet view, the 2 most important things in medicine and all of sort of the quality of life that we have is figuring out how to make water clean and handle our sewage, and vaccinations. So I'm happy to talk about the pros and cons of them. The 2, the Pfizer and the Moderna, a little bit higher side effects that are bothersome. Anaphylaxis, you need an epinephrine pen to stop to be able to breathe. So they're about 10-fold higher rate, but 1 in 100,000 versus 1 in a million. But 1 in 100,000 is much less than being struck by lightning, once in your lifetime. So
well, that goes back to what we were talking about a few moments ago. Science for science sake. I mean, will this save people or not? I mean. It's like there's somebody in the military. If there's a military conflict someplace, there's somebody who actually says, well, if we go in and do it this way and to kill the enemy, we're going to lose this percentage of our troops. If we go this way, we'll lose this percentage. Would that be a similar analogy?
Well, when you're in public health and you're doing public policy, you are talking about big numbers in the denominator and small numbers in the numerator, which are deaths or serious illness, and so you are trading off a big number of deaths for a smaller number of deaths often. But in this case, I think the important thing to remember in the vaccines is for the first time, we're talking about what is the efficacy of a vaccine, right? I mean, we've all gotten our influenza shots over the years, and we don't know. Every year it changes, but we don't really know. Is this 60% this year or 70? I mean, we just take it and we go on with our lives. So in the COVID vaccines, there's 5 stages you have to think about. One is, does a vaccine stop you from passing it to person? Okay. The next is, does it stop an infection? The next, does it stop a severe infection where you're really, really sick, hospitalization, and then death? So if you look at it in those 5 layers, these vaccines, the Pfizer, Moderna, the J&J now that's coming out here, they completely stop hospitalizations and deaths. So if I remembered, that's the thing that has us most worried. We don't know if it stops transmission. So that's the other end of the spectrum. And people get hung up on talking about that. But the bottom line is, I don't want to go in the hospital and I don't want to die of COVID. So I'm going to get the vaccine when it's available. Now, I'm in Taiwan, and we have some special. The good news is that we only have had 8 deaths in a country of 23 million people, and I can talk about why that happened. The bad news is we're at the bottom of the list in getting vaccines because of our success in stopping the virus.
And we don't want you in the hospital either, but doctors in the hospital, we know, are the worst patients.
Well, doctors are the worst patients in and out of the hospital. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll confess to that.
Exactly. I'm not a big fan of vaccines, but I have taken several because I don't like some of the junk that they put in it, especially mercury. I know that they've taken much of that out. They've also changed the name and made it a little bit misleading for those of us who did not pass chemistry in high school. Mm-hmm. Recently, I took the pneumonia vaccine, and I ran to get the shingles vaccine because I remember my mother having shingles. I remember my mother-in-law having shingles. I do not want to do that because I'm a bigger baby than both of them ever was.
Mark, shingles vaccine is the only one I don't recommend.
Oh my. Oops.
I have a very good reason. I have a very good reason for it too.
What's that?
Okay. What is shingles? Shingles is a reactivation of chickenpox.
Right.
Yeah, chickenpox as a kid, it goes dormant. When does it reactivate? It reactivates when there's something seriously wrong inside your body. So I've actually done a study on this, and most people who get shingles have some serious immunologic / cancer within 18 to 24 months. So I use it as the canary in the mine. I recommend it for my patients. Look, I mean, if you get shingles, it's going to be really painful, but we're going to find out why that virus tried to get out of your body, and maybe we can get ahead of a more serious disease. So, wow. Sorry, but that's the one that I use it as a diagnostic tool.
Interesting, very interesting. In our remaining time, and I'm going to invite you to come back. Because I think you've got a lot of information. I'd love to spend some more time talking about your company, and just pick your brain for the audience, because I think you've got a lot of information that we could use. Let's spend the last couple of minutes talking about Stay Safe, your book. I know that it was in July. You told me it was #1, which means that my book. Good, you're laughing. My book was not #1 in July. Actually, we didn't release it until August, and it was #1 then in our category. But tell us about Stay Safe, because it is about COVID, I believe.
It absolutely is. It's totally about COVID. It basically was motivated in February and March when I was seeing what I considered sort of crazy things around, masks and that from the Surgeon General and the CDC, and so. It's written as if you're my patient, and I'm trying to keep you from not seeing me. So it's much more at the level of, what sort of vitamins are important and what sort of supplements and masks and things, how to stay out of the hospital. So I guess, I'm sorry, and the profits go to Team Rubicon, which is a group of veterans volunteering in COVID communities and things. So you buy the book and you help somewhere else. You help yourself by reading the book, I hope, and you help somewhere else with it. So
you're paying it forward. Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's some point. Yeah, that's what life's all about. So it has at some point somebody said, Steve, 75% of what you put in this book is nowhere else on the internet. So said, "What? That's good. I tried to do that. If you can Google it, why you don't need my book." So each chapter it has many different things. I think probably for me one of the most learning. So I learned, again, when I taught at Stanford, the biggest thing I realized was I was learning more than the students being a teacher, and that was a real revelation. So I have a whole chapter in there on how not to die of COVID, and the fundamental discussion is around your pulmonary capacity, how it changes as you age, what you need to do to get back your 40-year-old pulmonary capacity. We learned in med school supposedly that pneumonia was old man's friend. It was a quiet way to die. I went to a radiology meeting in my 30s in Chicago in December, came back to Stanford and had pneumonia and was in Stanford Hospital. And I was lied to in med school. It's a miserable disease. You're basically drowning 24/7. So all pneumonias arise because you're not able to clear the mucus and the infections that you have in an effective manner. Mm-hmm. And that has to do with the viscosity of it. So, getting showers or getting in steam and working from the outside, drinking 96 ounces until your urine is clear water. But it's also having strong intercostal muscles. So I'm a big proponent of weight exercise as you get older because your muscles deteriorate. From age 40, your weight stays the same and you exchange fat for muscle every year. So you're kind of turning into Christopher Reeves at about 1.2% per year. So, but the one set of muscles you never exercise are the intercostals. And there's these little plastic devices that exercise people use. You can get them on the Amazon and that sort of thing. And they basically make you breathe in a high resistance fashion. In clinical trials, people that use them for 2 weeks before they have surgery have one less day in the hospital. They're off for respirators more faster. And so if you look at your lung capacity from age 40 to 60, 70, 80 in that, you lose about 60% of the volume of your lungs, and you lose about 80% of the speed of being able to breathe out, to be able to cough. Coughing vigorously is really important until your immune system makes the antibodies to stop these things. So basically, you're trying to buy 7 to 10 days without dying by being able to cough and being able to cough, low viscosity mucus and those sorts of things. So whole chapter on that in there. A lot of supplements, and it's sort of, I have a good, bad, and ugly under is my title of the section under supplements because I think they're very important.
Vitamin D right now in particular?
Bingo.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the RFDs around vitamins are to prevent deficiency syndromes, but they don't tell you what the right dose is to have maximal health. For example, vitamin C. So primates, other than humans, make vitamin C. So one idea was, okay, how much do they make in their bloodstream? Because that's probably the right amount to make. You do the math, you turn the crank, and we should be taking, Linus Pauling, anywhere, yes. 5 to 6 grams of vitamin C a day to have the same as a primate that makes it himself. So
I was proud to say that I interviewed him at least twice.
Interesting. Well, when I was teaching at Stanford, we actually wrote a paper together on the autooxidation of vitamin C. So in one of my 360 papers is one with the Linus Pauling Institute there on Page Mill and El Camino.
We're out of time, and there is so much more we can talk about. Will you come back?
I absolutely would. I would love to. I mean, I think we probably do. You and I align in a great deal in medicine. We learned nothing about nutrition in medical school. 4 years of medical school, zero nutrition. 60% of diseases, are nutrition related, lifestyle issues, exercise issues, those kinds of things. So, yeah. I'd love to come back.
I would like that. And by the way, Dr. Quay is really a champion because it's past 1 o'clock in the morning in Taiwan when we're talking, and I'm talking at 9:30 in the morning. One of the things that we talk about here on Late Night Health is, the old joke. I'm not suggesting that you yourself are old, but I know you know this joke. Doc, it hurts when I do this. And what does the doctor say?
Stop doing it.
Right. But then the patient just stops doing it. That's the old way. In the 21st century, the patient needs to say, hey, doc, why does it hurt? And that's what we talk
Exactly.
about here on Late Night Health.
Excellent.
We've had Dr. Quay's website up throughout our chat. We appreciate his time and look forward to our next conversation.
I do too,
I'm
Mark.
Mark. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean
No, I
to.
know. I really appreciate meeting you now, and I look forward to continuing our chats because I think you have a wonderful mission here with your followers, and I like to help out where I can.
All right. Thank you. I'm Mark Allen. Thanks for watching. We'll be back very soon. Bye bye for now. Okay. I hope you.